A spiral concentrator, an antique piece of machinery, would be added to finish the system. It would process the leftover material and extract the final bit of gold. For a failing mine, the cost of this change was high. The materials would cost about $7,000, and Freddie and Juan wanted 4 ounces of gold at the end of the season as payment for their labor. Although it was a huge risk, Levi and Corey realized they had to take it in exchange for a 50-fold boost in gold. There is a lot of material in this pipe. To no use, I have been hammering at it. Here we'll aim to get it all by doing a throat check and a colonoscopy. Making the mine profitable wasn't the only goal here. The goal was to finally break the island's curse. This one drastic, high-stakes idea formed the foundation of their entire future. However, a peculiar low hum seemed to come from the very rock surrounding them as the miners accepted the stipulations. A noise that had never been heard before. Juan embarked on an important task after the deal was finalized. A component of their strategy depended on technology that was nearly a relic and that the majority of contemporary miners had never ever seen. Juan followed a lead for a Humpher spiral concentrator, created in 1943 by a man named Ira B. Humpher, 20 meters from the claim in Washington state on the mainland. In the 1940s and 1950s, wash plants were dotted with these spirals. The gadget is a wonder of simplicity, you see. All it needs to function is water and gravity. Water and pay dirt are pumped to the top of a massive chute that resembles a corkscrew. A basic rule of physics takes over as the slurry spirals downward. While the considerably heavier gold clings to the inside track, the lighter waste material and sand are forced to the spiral's outside edge by the spinning motion. There are tiny apertures along this inner rail that capture the gold and divert it for collection. Due to the infamous electronic interference on the island, Freddie and Juan were placing their bets on this 80-year-old design. This entirely mechanical device proved impervious to failure, unlike more sophisticated modern technologies. They were hoping to revive a fragment of history. To be honest, they had never used one before, but they thought it was the hidden weapon they needed to boost the mine's productivity significantly. Levi and Corey would never make it without processing more material. Juan located them at last. 3 of the old spirals made of cast iron, standing together as reminders of a mining period long since past. They weighed a lot and were covered in filth from decades. Juan, however, recognized their potential. He was aware that a machine that had probably amassed a fortune in gold throughout its lengthy existence lay beneath the dirt and corrosion. He selected the finest among them, a flawless fragment of history that was set to receive another opportunity. Toward the conclusion of the season, we're considering 4 ounces. You don't have to pay it now, but it won't be a problem at the conclusion of the season. We can make it work if the production increases and we are able to obtain the gold. All right, indeed, yes. I believe we can. We must. How can a fading dream be saved? Hope was dwindling for miners Levi and Corey. Their remote island claim yielded just enough gold to pay for fuel. However, Freddie and Juan carried a crazy proposal with them when they got there. They would create a system so effective that production could be increased by an almost unthinkable 50 times for 4 ounces of gold. The island of dreams that have been lost. Dreams come here to die on the island. The natives called this area, which is tucked away off the coast of Washington state, the Isle of Echoes, because the stories of failure were the only things that appeared to endure. Prospectors had been drawn to the island by tales of rich gold veins for eons, only to be deceived by its harsh tactics. Modern electronics frequently suffered from unpredictable magnetic fields, and the weather may change from sunny to raging in a matter of minutes. The ground itself appeared unyielding, clinging obstinately to its riches. The most recent endeavor hovering on the brink of this well-known chasm was Levi and Corey's mines. One of our seismic sensors is seen here. Thus, these seismic instruments are passive. It is hence non-intrusive. Indeed. Excellent. We simply need to plant these in the ground, wait 20 minutes, and then move on to the next one. I'd like to wait 20 minutes before continuing. They had a painfully slow and back-breaking process. On level 3, they would chip away at the vein of quartz that held gold deep within the mountain. After that, they had to transport each and every bucket of ore to their level 2 processing facility along a perilous, meandering route. Mud slick and prone to rock falls, the road was a nightmare. They were losing the majority of the pure gold, since their own system was so ineffective after all that work. The gold they retrieved was hardly more than a dust in a pan, and on a good day, they were processing perhaps 150 pounds of material. In all honesty, they were on the verge of surrendering. The island's legend is poised to engulf another pair of dreamers. In the deep shaded valleys of the island, Their hope was dwindling as quickly as the dawn. At the end, as I watch you guys feed it, I really think we can put more through that hammer mill '07. In an hour, you might be able to get it. The entire enterprise was leaking cash and morale. And with every day that went by without any results, the pressure increased as the season went on. They were aware that their claim would be reduced to just another deserted scar on the earth, unless a miracle occurred. A mute witness to the harshness of the island. They were unaware that the answer to their final, frantic cry for assistance was almost here, but it would require them to accept the greatest danger of their lives. Freddie and Juan sensed the oppressive atmosphere of despair as soon as they set foot on the property. Although the difficulties were different, the sensation was similar. They witnessed the perilous journey, the ineffective mill, and the meager quantity of gold that stood for weeks of arduous work. They returned to Levi and Corey with a concept that was nothing short of revolutionary, after taking a good look at the faltering company. The three-pronged approach was intended to alter the game entirely. They started by offering a straightforward yet ingenious answer to the transportation issue. Replace the table with a salad box, and insert the end into a catch pin. The material is pumped to the spiral summit. Remove the heavy parts from the spiral. Ignore the dangerous path. Ore would be sent from the level 3 crusher to the mill below via a 180-foot, 4-inch conduit that would run directly down the mountainside. This would immediately streamline the entire procedure. Juan would then create a brand new, specially made salad box that would be far more efficient at capturing the free gold that was now being washed away. Just this would have a significant impact. The real game changer, however, was the last component of the strategy to obtain the necessary high volume. They would bring in a professional, Freddie explained. They would learn from this high-energy fragmentation expert how to extract ore from the vein far more quickly than their little roto tool could ever do by using a controlled rock-breaking technique. However, he was unaware that the spiral was concealing a serious weakness that may ruin their entire endeavor before it had even started. The only difference was that you guys used to run 150 pounds. Perhaps not even that. We likely ran 500 pounds. Yes. To be honest, after seeing it run, I believe we can actually increase it a bit. I also believe so. It was an expedition in and of itself to get the 80-year-old spiral back to the claim. The team had to securely strap the historic item down to ensure they wouldn't lose it during the rough trip, because the cast iron beast was quite hefty. There was more to it than equipment. It was the reintroduction of a piece of history. The actual work started as soon as they arrived at their headquarters. They constructed a broader wooden base for the spiral, in order to make it stable. When the slurry began to flow, it spread its footprint to maintain stability. The cleanup followed. It was covered in filth and grime from being idle for 8 decades. Freddie began working on the renovation with his buddy, Alex. For the spiral chute to function properly, they needed it to be as smooth as possible. Thus, they started the laborious cleaning and surface recoat planning procedure. While working, they discovered something unexpected. Almost 9,400 of these spirals were produced, and the majority were still in use, according to an old industry handbook Alex discovered. Knowing that was extremely implausible in the world of modern high-tech processors, Freddie sneered. It's unbelievable what you read. However, he encountered a significant obstacle when he focused on the pipes that channel the gold. Old, hardened debris filled the whole main collection pipe. Freddie began pounding on the pipe with a large hammer, but the obstruction refused to move. It was well packed. They prepared for a thorough inside examination of the pipe, because they needed to observe what was happening inside. Time was running out, and this unforeseen issue was a major blow. They needed to clear it as quickly as possible. Now, removing this one obstinate pipe was crucial to the operation's overall success. However, the obstruction was more worse than they had ever envisioned. Thermal force test. A catastrophe was discovered by the internal inspection. The pipe was clogged by more than simply gravel and dirt. The pipe itself was the issue. It had been lined with rubber decades ago to prevent wear. However, that rubber lining had degraded and folded inward over the course of 8 decades, forming a dense, impenetrable block. It could not be forced out or drilled. Freddie was aware that they were running out of time for a delicate solution, because their deadline was approaching. He needed to take drastic action. He made the decision to attempt thermally removing the obstruction. The risk was enormous. He reached for his oxyacetylene torch, a unique instrument capable of producing extraordinarily high temperatures. He was going to give the old cast iron pipe heat that would reach 5,700 F. He may melt or shatter the valuable 80-year-old metal with one error or 1 second too long. ruining the spiral and their whole scheme in the process. With bated breath, the squad watched as Freddy ignited the torch. As the white-hot flame collided with the ancient metal, a roar reverberated throughout the workshop. In an attempt to burn the rubber within the pipe without destroying the iron, he cautiously heated the pipe's exterior. The fact that I haven't yet noticed any gold in it is a really positive indication. That indicates that Sally is operating at a high level. He turned off the torch after a few tense moments and picked up a heavy hitting implement. He tapped the pipe a couple of times sharply, nothing at first. Then he struck it more forcefully. A piece of burned, melted rubber, followed by a plume of black smoke, erupted from the end. It was actually working. He struck it several more times, and a stream of charred rubble spilled over the ground. Finally, they could see that the pipe was clean when they looked through it. It was an untidy, dangerous remedy that turned out better than they could have imagined. The real test had arrived after they had avoided a massive bullet, assembling everything and determining whether this assortment of both new and old components would truly provide more gold. The time has come for the truth. It was time to check if their crazy plan would succeed, now that the new pipe system and the renovated spiral were fully completed. Levi and Corey began feeding material into the jaw crusher at the summit of the mountain. After flowing into a chute, the crushed ore was shaken down into the new 180-foot pipe by two strong vibrators. The water and rock slurry exploded out of the pipe's terminus and into the new sala box at level 2. Everything was operating flawlessly. The rate of feed was amazing, a continuous, consistent stream of material that exceeded their daily processing capacity. In actuality, the spiral is operating quite effectively. As we've been running, Freddy has actually been panning it. He hasn't yet noticed any color in this. Juan watched the spiral concentrator closely while the apparatus operated. Along the iron chute, the slurry swirled. A captivating black whirlpool. The design was operating just as planned. The thicker substance was adhering to the inside track, presumably holding gold. Freddy was panning the tailings to observe what, if anything, was being lost while he collected samples at the very end of the process. He grinned broadly as he looked up after his third pan. There was not a bit of gold in sight. It was an excellent sign. It indicated that the 80-year-old spiral and the new celle were collaborating flawlessly to capture all of the gold before it could get away. The system proved to be a huge success. The spiral was gathering the fine gold that followed, while the SLLE was catching the great majority of the larger bits. Their radical scheme was operating perfectly. Compared to earlier, the volume of material they were transporting was astounding. They were now sending a flood of ore directly to a very effective recovery unit, instead of laboriously dragging a few buckets down a perilous road. The exciting buzz of advancement and the prospect of a huge payout permeated the air on the Echo Isle for the first time in a long time. Instead of desperation. Only when they completed their first cleanup will the full extent of their accomplishments become apparent. It was time for the first cleanup, after the new system had only been in use for a short time. The contrast was striking. Previously, cleaning up meant discovering a few small, lonesome pieces of gold in the pan. Juan tilted the pan now and saw a lovely golden gold stripe at the bottom, thick and heavy. Well, based on our calculations, we estimate that the materials will cost about 7,000. They had never observed a measurable amount from a single run previously. The secret was the huge amount of material they processed. Running 150 pounds of ore used to be difficult for Levi and Corey. They had already processed more than 500 pounds in the brief test run, and Juan was certain they could push it considerably further, perhaps even double that amount. For the moment of truth, they meticulously gathered the gold and set it on the scale. The figures increased by 0.2005. At 7,000, it calmed down. For Levi and Corey, it meant everything, even though it would not seem like much to an outsider. About 50 times as much gold that they had found in their prior runs was recovered in that 0.70, which was valued at about $160. It was unquestionably evidence that the system was effective. Juan and Freddy did the calculations. 1.6868 of gold, valued at an astounding $3,864, would result from operating the plant for a typical 6-day week. They made a fortune and saved the mine. However, was it appropriate to employ such forceful tactics on Historis Island? Subscribe and like to see what comes next.